The moment the flight attendant's hand sliced through the air and pointed toward the narrow aisle behind him, the cabin seemed to hold its breath, and the single father standing there felt his world shrink to the size of the boarding pass trembling in his fingers. Every eye in first class followed him as if he were a mistake that needed correcting, a stain on polished leather seats and quiet luxury. His daughter's small hand tightened around his, her fingers cold, her eyes wide with confusion and fear, and in that instant he knew this was not just about a seat on a plane, but about dignity, survival, and how quickly people judged what they did not understand. Before the story unfolds any further, take a second to pause. If you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in the quiet power of compassion, please like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to the channel KNH Stories so we can keep telling stories that matter. He was a man worn thin by responsibility, the kind of exhaustion that settles into the bones. Since his wife's death 2 years earlier, life had become a series of careful calculations. Every dollar mattered. Every promise to his daughter had to be kept, no matter how heavy the weight on his shoulders. This flight was not a luxury splurge but a miracle paid for by months of saving, a free upgrade he had earned with miles collected from endless work trips taken not for ambition, but for survival. He had promised his daughter that this trip would be special, that for once they would sit somewhere bright and calm, somewhere that didn't feel like a constant reminder of what they had lost. As the attendant stood rigid before him, her uniform crisp and her expression sharp, the father felt the familiar burn of shame crawl up his spine. The unspoken judgment was louder than any words could be. His jacket was old, his shoes scuffed, his face lined with grief and fatigue. He didn't belong here, not in a world of champagne glasses and quiet confidence. Around them, passengers shifted uncomfortably, some curious, some annoyed, some already turning away, unwilling to witness discomfort they might one day recognize as their own. His daughter looked up at him, searching his face for reassurance, and he forced a smile he didn't feel. He bent slightly so she wouldn't hear the murmurs, so she wouldn't see the way his hands shook. He had learned to swallow pride for her sake, to endure humiliation silently, because arguing would only scare her. Every step backward down that aisle felt like a failure, like breaking another promise he could not afford to break. But life has a way of turning on a single moment, sometimes so quickly it leaves everyone stunned. As the attendant reached for the intercom, something shifted. A man seated nearby had been watching quietly, his eyes narrowing not with judgment, but with concern. Others followed his gaze to the boarding pass still clutched in the father's hand, its first-class marking visible to anyone willing to look. A murmur rippled through the cabin, not sharp this time, but questioning. The attendant paused, confusion flickering across her face as she finally examined the pass she had dismissed moments earlier. The realization hit her like turbulence. The seat was his. The upgrade was valid. The mistake was hers. What followed was not loud or dramatic, but it was powerful. The attendant's posture changed. The authority drained from her stance, replaced by something raw and human. In the narrow aisle, surrounded by witnesses and silence, she lowered herself, not in submission, but in remorse, dropping to her knees so she could meet the little girl's frightened eyes and the father's stunned expression. Her face flushed with shame as the weight of her actions settled heavily on her shoulders. The cabin felt different now. The air softened. The passengers who had looked away leaned forward, their expressions altered by the sudden reminder that kindness is a choice, and mistakes have consequences. The attendant apologized, not with polished professionalism, but with trembling sincerity, acknowledging the harm she had caused, the assumptions she had made, and the pain she had inflicted without a second thought. The father stood frozen, unsure how to react. Years of being overlooked, underestimated, and judged had taught him to expect nothing. Yet here was accountability, raw and public. He felt his daughter's grip loosen as she sensed the tension ease. Her small shoulders relaxed, and the fear in her eyes slowly faded. When they finally took their seats, the luxury around them felt less important than the lesson etched into that moment. The flight continued, but something invisible had changed for everyone on board. The attendant served them quietly, her movements careful, her gaze respectful. Other passengers offered gentle smiles, small nods of understanding, silent apologies for their own quick judgments. High above the clouds, the father watched his daughter sip juice and press her nose to the window, marveling at the world below. For the first time in a long while, his chest felt lighter. Not because of where he was sitting, but because someone had seen him, truly seen him, and owned their mistake. It reminded him that even in a world that often feels cold and unforgiving, humanity still breaks through in unexpected ways. As the plane descended and the lights dimmed, the father reflected on how close he had been to shrinking himself once again for the comfort of others. He realized that dignity isn't granted by seats or status, but by the courage to stand still in the face of unfairness and the grace to accept genuine remorse when it arrives. If this story has touched your heart, if it stirred something inside you or reminded you of a moment when kindness made all the difference, please take a moment to like this video, share it, and subscribe to KNH Stories. Your support helps these stories reach the people who need them most. And before this story ends, we have a special request for you. Please comment the word kindness below if you believe that empathy can still change lives, even in the smallest moments. As the doors opened and the passengers filed out, the father held his daughter's hand a little tighter, carrying with him not the memory of humiliation, but the quiet power of accountability and compassion. Sometimes, it only takes 1 minute to break a heart, and one sincere act to begin healing it.